Before we dive into this unbelievable journey of betrayal, ambition, and ultimate triumph, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment below where you're watching from. Your support fuels these powerful true life stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. I'm Cara Mitchell. I was 28 years old the night my life was rewritten. The night my family, my own blood, tried to cut me off, unaware that I was standing on the edge of something far greater than they could imagine. For years, I had carried the label they placed on me, the black sheep, the outsider, the one who didn't follow the Mitchell script. In my family's pristine world of Boston's elite, success was not simply expected, it was demanded. Lee lived in a sprawling colonial mansion in Brookline, Massachusetts. With its manicured gardens, grand white columns, and symmetrical perfection that looked like it had leapt from the pages of Architectural Digest. The Mitchell name was heavy currency in Boston's financial circles. My father, Thomas Mitchell, spent 3 decades climbing to the peak of Goldman Sachs, building an empire of numbers while showing barely a flicker of warmth. He measured worth in digits, not emotions. My mother, Eleanor, was the mirror image of Bostonian high society. A Wellesley graduate who had traded ambition for charity galas, country clubs, and carefully curated social standing. Her appearance was impeccable. From the perfectly styled blonde bob to the navy designer dresses she collected like trophies. But her true mastery was in appearances, especially when it came to her children. There were 3 of us, James, Madison, and me. Or as I often felt, and then me. James, the eldest, was the golden child. At 30, he was already a vice president at Goldman Sachs, wearing his father's tailored ambitions like a second skin. His Harvard MBA wasn't displayed in his own apartment, but framed and hung in my father's study, a daily monument to the family's legacy. To them, his successes were collective family victories. Madison was the princess, the political spouse in training. With my mother's social charm and my father's strategic mind, she was destined for high society and high office. Her law degree from Harvard was accessorized with designer heels and dinner parties splashed across the Boston Globe's society pages. Madison was everything my parents could proudly parade. And then there was me, Cara, the outlier, the problem child, the one who dared to dream in a different language. While my siblings collected accolades and Ivy League credentials, I sat alone in my bedroom, disassembling computers and teaching myself to code through online forums. At 12, I was writing simple programs, while my father dismissed it as a hobby for boys who can't play sports. And my mother worried it would ruin my complexion and social prospects. In their eyes, I wasn't building skills, I was building disappointment. High school was no sanctuary. I excelled in math, physics, and computer science at Phillips Academy. My robotics team won nationals. My SAT math score was perfect. My reward? A distracted, "That's nice, dear." My parents attended one science fair, only because James needed a ride to a lacrosse game nearby. My victories barely registered compared to Madison's debate trophies or James's internship interviews. When college applications came around, my parents had already mapped my life. Wharton for undergrad, Harvard for business school, followed by a respectable consulting job, all neatly lined up for the right marriage. But I broke the script. I applied to MIT. Their reaction was swift and condescending. My father laughed. "That's not a Mitchell field, Cara. That's for people who work for us." My mother's face drained of color. "But all your friends are going to Princeton and Yale." "Darling, who will you even meet at MIT?" Still, I went. I earned a partial scholarship, not because they couldn't afford it, but because my father called it financial responsibility. I juggled part-time jobs, brutal coursework, and a 4.0 GPA while they sipped cocktails on Martha's Vineyard. At graduation, the only family member who showed up was Aunt Patricia, my father's sister, the sole voice of unconditional support. She had divorced twice, taught feminist literature, and dared to live life on her own terms. She understood me in ways no one else did. After MIT, I took my first job at a small healthcare startup in Cambridge, making a modest salary that became dinner table fodder. Cara is still finding herself, my mother would say, as if I were lost in Europe, not working 60-hour weeks revolutionizing healthcare technology. All that education for a secretary's salary, my father would joke. It's so brave how you don't care about money or status, Madison would add, her voice dripping with condescension. I could never be that free-spirited. But while they patronized me, I was watching. I was learning. I was planning. I was preparing for the moment when I would no longer need their approval or their money. And then one sleepless night, everything changed. While the rest of the world slept, I sat at my cheap desk in a tiny Somerville apartment, staring at my code. That's when the idea struck. The healthcare system was broken, overloaded, inefficient, and outdated. Patients waited months to see specialists, while hospital schedules sat underutilized. But what if artificial intelligence could optimize those gaps? What if technology could triage patients in real time, matching them with the care they desperately needed? That was the seed of secure health. With $50,000 scraped together from my savings, I began building my prototype while still holding my day job. Every evening blurred into late-night coding marathons fueled by takeout and cheap coffee. I lived off adrenaline and the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, I was building something that could matter. What I didn't realize then was that this would become the thing that would finally shatter the glass ceiling my family had built above me. The road from an idea to a company is paved with rejection. In those early months, rejection became my silent partner. 37 investors turned me down, some with polite dismissals, others with condescending smiles. The worst weren't the ones who said no, but the ones who said, "You need a man next to you to be taken seriously." Healthcare is complicated, one investor told me, as if I hadn't already spent years immersed in its inner workings. You're clearly bright, but you'll need a seasoned CEO to give investors confidence. They didn't see me as the leader. They saw me as a girl with a good idea. But I wasn't looking for permission. I was looking for that one yes. And then she arrived. Jessica Barnes was the unexpected lifeline I didn't know I was waiting for. A former healthcare executive turned angel investor who knew the industry's blind spots because she had fought them herself. After a single pitch meeting that stretched into 3 hours, she offered me $200,000 in seed funding. "You don't need permission, Cara," she said. "You need runway." With Jessica's backing, I quit my day job and hired my first 3 employees. A back-end developer, a UI/UX designer, and an administrative assistant named Alicia Thompson. But Alicia was far more than an assistant. She immediately grasped my vision, quickly taking on responsibilities far beyond her job description. She became my operational backbone, my strategist, my silent co-founder in everything but title. "This isn't just software," she told me during her interview. "This is going to change lives." We set up shop in a converted storage room inside a Cambridge co-working space, a glorified closet with flickering fluorescent lights and no air conditioning. In July, when the AC failed entirely, we worked half-dressed, taping bags of frozen peas to our bodies just to survive the oppressive heat while debugging code. Our desks were cardboard boxes, our chairs, old cushions scavenged from curbside piles. But what we lacked in luxury, we made up for in vision. And then, the first crack of light broke through. After 9 exhausting months, Massachusetts General Hospital agreed to pilot Secure Health in their neurology department. The results stunned even us. Patient satisfaction rose 42%, wait times dropped 68%, specialist utilization improved by 33%. Finally, we had data, irrefutable numbers that validated everything we had built. Hospitals began signing on. Revenues trickled in, then slowly grew into streams. By the end of our first year, we moved into a real office in Kendall Square, expanded our team to 15 people, and closed our Series A funding, $4.5 million that would take us national. Yet through all this, the long nights, the breakthroughs, the victories, I said nothing to my family. Why? Because they had made it painfully clear that their version of success had nothing to do with passion or impact, only status and money. And if I failed, I didn't want them gloating. If I succeeded, I didn't want them to claim it as their own. So I crafted a carefully controlled illusion. I let them believe I still worked at my original startup job. I invented a modest 1-bedroom apartment, though I had quietly purchased a loft in South Boston. I arrived at family gatherings in my old Honda Civic, leaving my Tesla safely out of sight. The secrecy wasn't about revenge, not yet. It was about self-protection. I wasn't ready to let them see my heart laid bare, only for them to diminish it again. But as the months turned into years, Secure Health exploded beyond anything even I had imagined. Series B funding came in, $28 million at a $65 million valuation. We signed contracts with over 130 hospitals nationwide. Our staff swelled to more than 100 employees across multiple offices. And yet, at every family gathering, I played my role, the drifting daughter, the one they pitied, minimized, dismissed, until everything changed with one phone call. In the weeks leading up to our annual family dinner, Secure Health was preparing for its IPO, led, ironically, by my father's own firm, Goldman Sachs. Early discussions pegged our valuation at nearly $100 million. International investors were circling. Journalists were knocking. My name had appeared in the Wall Street Journal's 30 Under 30 list, an article I kept carefully hidden from my family's prying eyes. And on the eve of that fateful dinner, a call came in from Japan. SoftBank was preparing to take a significant pre-IPO position. If the deal closed, it would push our valuation even higher. I barely slept that night, my mind racing between excitement and dread. Should I finally tell them? Should I reveal everything? I chose to wear my armor, a simple black Banana Republic dress, understated, deliberate. I wasn't dressing for their approval. I was dressing for control. The Mitchell family estate looked exactly as I remembered, grand, cold, immaculate. The lawn's circular driveway glistened under manicured hedges as I parked my battered Honda behind James's Porsche and Madison's Range Rover. Margot, the longtime housekeeper, greeted me at the door with a warm smile, the only sincere welcome I would receive all night. "Miss Cara, it's so good to see you." "You too, Margot." I handed her a modest $30 Cabernet, resisting the temptation to bring one of the $300 bottles from my personal collection. "Everyone's in the solarium," she whispered. "Your brother's sharing news about his promotion." Of course he was. The solarium was my mother's crown jewel. Towering glass walls, perfectly curated orchids, and crystal glasses clinking under the glow of chandeliers. My father stood near the fireplace. My mother rearranged the canopies. James held court with his latest professional conquest, and Madison giggled on cue. But one unexpected face stood out: Aunt Patricia, the one person who always saw me. "Cara, you finally made it," my mother sang, as though I were an hour late. "Hello, Mother," I replied, accepting her perfunctory air kiss. "Traffic was brutal." "You really should consider moving closer to the family," she began. "A ritual opening. There are lovely apartments in Back Bay." Before she could finish, my father's voice boomed. "There she is, the computer whiz." He lifted his glass, smiling with condescension wrapped in faux warmth. "Hi, Dad. Still at that little startup?" I smiled, keeping my voice deliberately vague. "Something like that." James swooped in with his trademark arrogance. "Baby sister, just telling everyone about my new division. 14 people under me now. Corner office with a harbor view." He grinned. "But hey, I'm sure clicking buttons or whatever you do is rewarding too." "Very rewarding," I said, my tone even. Madison floated over next, eyes scanning my simple dress. "You look comfortable. Very appropriate for your position." Only Aunt Patricia offered sincerity, wrapping me in a genuine hug. "Ignore them all," she whispered. "How are you really?" "Surviving." We exchanged knowing glances. She alone sensed what I was holding back. And none of them had any idea what was about to unfold. Dinner at the Mitchell estate was never simply about food. It was a ritualized performance, a stage where family status updates were exchanged like corporate quarterly reports. The long mahogany dining table gleamed beneath the chandelier's sharp light. Ancestral portraits lining the walls like silent, judging spectators. Margot announced, "Dinner is served," and the performance began. My mother, ever the master of ceremonies, raised her glass. To James's promotion, Madison's wedding plans, and to family togetherness. That pause, that falter, as she struggled to find anything in my life worthy of mention, was as familiar to me as my own name. We began with lobster bisque that likely cost more than my entire grocery budget in my early startup days. The conversation followed its usual script. James led the updates: his promotion, his team, his complex mergers, his rising star at Goldman Sachs. My mother volleyed questions designed to spotlight his accomplishments like curated jewels for public display. Madison followed with a polished recital of wedding plans. Her Vera Wang dress, the guest list capped at a staggering 300. The governor's partial attendance framed as a challenge. Naturally, her fiancé's growing political aspirations were sprinkled in like garnish. And then, as always, all eyes turned to me. "And what about you, Cara?" my father asked. His tone dipped in theatrical interest. "Anything new with your computer job?" For a moment, my throat tightened. After years of living behind a carefully constructed wall of secrecy, this was the moment I had both dreaded and anticipated. My truth sat like dynamite beneath the tablecloth, waiting to be ignited. "Actually," I began slowly, "the healthcare app I've been working on is doing quite well. We've expanded to several hospitals." "That's nice, dear," my mother interrupted dismissively, pivoting back to James before I could elaborate. "James, tell everyone about the summer house you're considering on Nantucket." And just like that, I was dismissed. Again. I sat in silence as James regaled the table with waterfront property options. My duck grew cold on my plate. My mind wrestled between anger and the old, familiar ache of invisibility. How many years had I allowed them to make me feel small? How many accomplishments had I buried beneath polite smiles and self-preservation? Aunt Patricia caught my eye across the table and offered a quiet, knowing smile. She could feel the storm rising in me. But the night had more in store. As Margot cleared away the main course, my father cleared his throat. The Mitchell signal for a major family pronouncement. The room grew silent as he began. "Your mother and I have been doing some estate planning," he announced, swirling his scotch. James and Madison exchanged anticipatory smiles. With James's advancement and Madison's upcoming nuptials, we've decided to revisit the family's financial arrangements. The performance was rehearsed, the intentions crystal clear. James will take over as trustee of the family's main investment portfolio, he continued. Madison and Brian will receive the Cape Cod property after their wedding. Madison chimed in with self-satisfied confidence. It's only logical. Brian's political career will benefit from a historic family estate. And then came the pivot. "Which brings us to you, Cara." The words landed with surgical precision. I straightened, feeling the air shift. "We've supported your unconventional choices for some time," my father said, adopting the tone of a benevolent executioner. "But we've come to a decision." My mother added with cold finality, "We're cutting you off completely, effective immediately." The words hung in the air like a slap. Even though I hadn't relied on family money since college, the humiliation of being publicly disowned at my own family's dinner table pierced deeper than any financial blow. It was about control, about power, about reminding me that I was still, in their eyes, the disappointment. The annual allowance, any inheritance considerations, access to the family properties, all of it, my father elaborated, his voice clinical. "Until you demonstrate more appropriate choices befitting a Mitchell." "Appropriate choices?" I asked quietly, my voice steady despite the burn rising in my chest. "You mean abandoning my career for something you approve of?" "Don't be dramatic," Madison interjected sweetly. "They just want what's best for you. You're wasting your potential at that little tech job." James nodded, adding his own condescension. "The family has a reputation to maintain, Cara. Your choices reflect on all of us." I scanned their faces. My father's icy authority, my mother's rehearsed concern, Madison's smug self-righteousness, James's carefully veiled superiority. Only Aunt Patricia looked stricken, her hand gently squeezing mine under the table. "You've had ample time to establish yourself," my father continued. "Yet you insist on this healthcare software gimmick that's going nowhere. It's time for adult decisions." "It's not a hobby," I said softly. "It's a company, my company." Madison couldn't suppress her laughter. "Please, you work for a startup that'll probably fold like the rest. Real businesses require business acumen," my mother added, with a note of scolding. "Something you actively rejected by avoiding proper business education." "This isn't a punishment, Cara," my father concluded. "It's motivation." That word, motivation, nearly broke me. For years I had waited for this moment. I had pictured myself finally revealing my success on my own terms, but not like this. Not surrounded by cold stares and veiled contempt. And then, like divine timing, my phone began vibrating in my purse. Once, twice, 3 times, then more. It was Alicia, our prearranged signal for urgent. "Perhaps you should answer that," Aunt Patricia whispered gently. I hesitated, then pulled out my phone. My father sighed in theatrical disapproval. "Excuse me," I said calmly as I stood to take the call, remaining just steps from the table. "Alicia, what's going on?" Her voice was breathless, excited, electric. "Miss Cara, SoftBank just confirmed. They're in for $40 million. The valuation is official. We've hit $100 million pre-IPO. The Goldman team's popping champagne." The words reverberated through the silent dining room. Every syllable struck the table like a small explosion. My mother's wineglass froze midair. My father's jaw tensed. Madison's mouth fell open. James looked genuinely stunned. That's incredible news, I managed, though my focus was on the imploding expressions around me. Alicia continued, oblivious to the bomb she had just dropped in the middle of the Mitchell family power play. Forbes interview confirmed for Monday. You're being featured in their Billionaires in the Making series. And the Hospital Association wants you to keynote their annual conference. Thank you, Alicia. Let's set a team meeting for tomorrow to go over everything. I ended the call and returned to the table, each step deliberate. Aunt Patricia was the first to break the stunned silence, raising her wineglass with a mischievous glint. Well, she said cheerfully, I believe congratulations are in order. The scene was frozen, like actors waiting for forgotten lines. And for the first time in my life, I was the one commanding the stage. The silence that followed was almost theatrical, as though the entire room had been plunged into an unscripted scene they had no rehearsal for. The mighty Mitchells, who once thought my career was a harmless hobby, now stared at me as though I had become an alien creature. My mother recovered first. Of course she did. Years of social maneuvering had taught her how to pivot when the winds shifted. Cara, darling, she said, her voice oozing a sweetness it had never carried when addressing me before. Why didn't you tell us about your success? This is absolutely wonderful. My father's face, however, had shifted from dismissal to calculation. I could almost hear the gears grinding in his mind, recalibrating my worth. 100 million, he said slowly, as though tasting the words. Pre-IPO valuation for your healthcare application? Secure Health. I supplied the name they had never cared to remember before. Yes, Goldman Sachs is handling the offering. I let that land. The name Goldman Sachs, my father's kingdom, was the sharpest knife I could have thrown. James's face stiffened. You're working with Goldman? He asked, disbelief edging his voice. Which team? Marcus Steinberg's group, I replied smoothly. He's been personally involved since our Series B. My father blinked, momentarily thrown. Marcus hasn't led a healthcare IPO in years. He made an exception, I said with quiet confidence. He believes in what we're building. Madison, always quick to recalibrate her alliances, jumped in with feigned enthusiasm. This is amazing, Cara. I always knew you were talented with your computer skills. The transparent attempt to rewrite history was almost laughable. But I kept my voice calm, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing any anger. Did you? I asked mildly. That's not how I remember it. My phone buzzed again. A text. I glanced down. Wall Street Journal wants exclusive comment on SoftBank deal. Deadline in 3 hours. Also, your photo shoot with Frank confirmed for Tuesday. My mother, always observant when it came to status markers, suddenly noticed the Cartier watch on my wrist. Is that a Cartier? She asked, as though seeing me for the first time. Yes, I said, letting the truth drip out. Last year's model. And your dress, that's not Banana Republic, is it? Celine, I admitted. I dress down for family dinners. The implication hung there like fog. I had never wanted them to see the life I'd built. Not until they had no choice. My father cleared his throat, switching fully into businessman mode. Clearly, we've had a misunderstanding about your professional situation. Perhaps we should revisit our earlier discussion. About cutting me off? I asked bluntly, locking eyes with him. He shifted uncomfortably. About the family financial arrangements. Obviously, circumstances have changed. Have they? I replied, voice steady. My circumstances haven't changed in the last 15 minutes. I'm exactly the same person with the same company you dismissed. Don't be difficult, dear, my mother interjected, her voice brittle. Your father is trying to fix a simple misunderstanding. It's not a misunderstanding, I said gently. You made yourselves perfectly clear earlier. My choices weren't respectable enough to merit your support. James tried his own approach, sensing the room slipping. We were just concerned, Cara. You never shared any of this with us. We thought you were struggling. From across the table, Aunt Patricia softly murmured into her wineglass, I wonder why. Then Madison, never able to stay quiet long, leaned in eagerly. But Cara, this changes everything. With your tech expertise and Brian's political connections, we could create such powerful synergies. He's been looking for healthcare platforms to champion for his campaign. The audacity was breathtaking. And Dad, she continued, imagine the investment opportunities for the family fund. Getting in before the IPO would be incredibly advantageous. We should discuss how to structure the family's investment position. My father nodded. I'll call Marcus tomorrow. And there it was, the pure transactional greed exposed without shame. Stop, I said, softly but firmly, raising my hand. They froze. I'm not looking for family investment. Surely a pre-IPO family position would be beneficial, my father pressed. No, I said again. Our cap table is closed. Board positions, James offered desperately. A Mitchell presence would lend credibility. Our board is complete, I answered calmly. It's filled with people who believed in me when none of you did. My mother leaned forward, her voice trembling with a mixture of desperation and false warmth. Darling, now that we understand everything, we want to support you properly. Now that you know I'm rich, I corrected gently. That's different from support. Aunt Patricia coughed discreetly to hide her smile, watching the unraveling with barely concealed amusement. Madison, growing more desperate, tried one final angle. We're family, Cara. Family supports each other. Do they? I asked softly. Where was that support an hour ago? The past is the past, Cara. Let's focus on moving forward. The Mitchell network can open doors. What doors, Dad? I interrupted. We're valued at $100 million with Goldman Sachs as our underwriter. What doors remain closed? He fell silent. I appreciate your sudden interest, I said, rising from my seat. But I have an early meeting tomorrow. I'll be leaving now. You're leaving? My mother gasped, clearly panicked. We haven't even had dessert. We need to discuss your media strategy, she added. Your father has excellent wealth management connections. I have advisors, I said, gathering my purse. PR, legal, financial, everything I need. But we're your family, she insisted desperately. I paused at the door, looking at all of them, the polished dining room, the anxious faces, the carefully curated privilege. Yes, I said quietly. You are, which is why I kept coming back year after year, hoping that one day my success wouldn't need to be proven, that one day you'd simply see me. They said nothing. Patricia, I turned, offering my arm. Would you like a ride home? Gladly, she smiled. As we walked out into the cool Boston night, my phone buzzed once more. Financial Times wants to feature you as Healthcare Innovator of the Year. Confirmed tomorrow. Behind us, the Mitchell legacy sat stunned at its own table, left to finally confront the daughter they thought they had discarded. The drive from Brookline back to Cambridge was quiet at first, the tension from the night still lingering in the air like static electricity. The Mitchell family dinner had detonated in a way none of us could have predicted. But for the first time in years, I felt light, liberated. Aunt Patricia finally broke the silence with a soft chuckle. $50,000 for your speaking fee, she said, shaking her head with amusement. Your mother nearly swallowed her pearl necklace. I laughed for real this time, my body releasing the pressure it had carried for far too long. I don't actually charge for speaking engagements, I confessed, but for Madison's fiancé, oh, I'd charge him double. Self-important young man, Patricia muttered with a wink. We pulled up to her cozy Cambridge brownstone, but neither of us moved to exit the car. We sat there, two women bound not by family obligation, but by something far stronger, mutual respect. You knew, didn't you? I asked softly. Patricia smiled. I read the Times, dear. Your company was featured 3 months ago. I was waiting for you to tell me when you were ready. I should have told you, I admitted, lowering my gaze. I just got used to keeping it separate from them. She reached over and patted my hand gently. For good reason. You protected your dream until it could stand on its own legs. Your father and I grew up being taught that success meant belonging to the right schools, clubs, and families. It took me until my 40s to break free from that. You did it in your 20s. I haven't fully broken free, I said. I still showed up to dinner. I still wanted their approval, even if I pretended otherwise. That's being human, not weak, she said, her voice firm. We all want our parents' love. The difference is, you didn't compromise your soul to get it. Her words landed deeply. I squeezed her hand before finally stepping out of the car. When I arrived at my loft in South Boston that night, the city's skyline glittered outside my floor-to-ceiling windows. My sanctuary, my real home, not the illusion I had allowed my family to believe for years. I kicked off my heels, poured a glass of wine, and glanced at my phone. A flurry of new messages had arrived, each one more absurd than the last. From my father. We should discuss investment strategies for your new position. Lunch tomorrow at the club? From my mother. Darling, I've added you to the guest list for the Symphony Gala next month. The chairman would love to discuss a potential donation from your company. From James. Impressive move, sis. Let's grab coffee soon. Would love to hear more about healthcare tech sector opportunities. I'm so sorry, she said the moment I answered. I had no idea you were at a family dinner. I shouldn't have called. Don't apologize, I interrupted with a smile. Your timing was perfect. Really? She sounded relieved. So, they took the news well? They took it exactly how I expected. I paused, choosing my words carefully. Suddenly, my computer hobby is fascinating. I've been added to guest lists I wasn't worthy of yesterday. Ouch. Honestly, it's freeing, I said. I don't have to hide anymore, and I don't have to pretend they were ever going to value me for who I am. Alicia shifted into business mode instantly. Speaking of which, the team wants to celebrate the SoftBank deal. We're organizing breakfast tomorrow at 8. Perfect, I said. And Alicia? Yes? Order the good champagne. The team deserves it. The next morning, as I walked into our Kendall Square headquarters, I was greeted not by polished marble and oil portraits like my father's world, but by something far richer. Purpose. The glass-walled conference room buzzed with excitement. 35 faces turned to greet me. Developers, designers, healthcare experts, and administrative staff who had stood with me when secure health was nothing but a gamble. I set my bag down, my heart full. Before we popped the champagne, I began, I want to say something. The room hushed. What we've built together is valuable, but not because of SoftBank's check or Goldman Sachs's valuation. It's valuable because it matters. Every single day, patients are getting care faster because of this platform. Families are being spared months of waiting. Lives are being saved. Alicia raised her glass. To secure health, she toasted, and to Cara, who saw what healthcare could be when everyone else was stuck on what it was. The clinking of glasses filled the room as we celebrated not just money, but mission. After the celebration, I retreated to my office, where an elaborate flower arrangement had been delivered. Easily the size of a small tree. The card attached was unmistakable. So proud of our brilliant daughter. Love, Mom and Dad. The irony was staggering. 24 hours earlier, they were cutting me off. Now, I was their brilliant daughter. My assistant poked her head in. Your father's called 3 times, and James is in the lobby. I raised an eyebrow. James, here? Said he was in the neighborhood. Give me 5 minutes, then send him up. James entered my office, looking polished, rehearsed, and slightly nervous. He whistled softly as he took in the sleek space, the modern glass desk, the framed Wall Street Journal article, the bustling team beyond the glass walls. Nice setup, he said, hands in his pockets. Very tech startup chic. What brings you to Kendall Square, James? I asked, not offering him a seat. Can't a brother visit his successful sister? You've never visited before, I said flatly. He had the grace to look mildly embarrassed. Look, Cara, about last night. Let me stop you right there, I interrupted calmly. If you're here to discuss investment proposals or partnership ideas, I'm not interested. He frowned. That's a bit harsh. We're family. Yes, and because we're family, I'll still have lunch with you, attend holidays, make polite conversation. But secure health? Off limits. You're not being very business savvy, he tried. The Mitchell Network could. The Mitchell Network wasn't offered to me 4 years ago, while I was eating ramen and coding in my apartment. I don't need it now. James shifted awkwardly. Dad feels terrible, you know. The cutting off thing, it was meant to motivate you. We had no idea you were already successful. And if I wasn't? I asked. If I were exactly who you thought I was, a mid-level employee barely scraping by, would cutting me off still have been appropriate? He said nothing. James, I have a meeting in 10 minutes with actual investors who believed in this company before knowing its valuation. Unless there's something else? He straightened, businessman mask sliding back into place. Right. Well, I'll tell Dad you're busy. Maybe dinner next week? Tell him I'll call when I'm ready. James hesitated at the door. Cara, when you're ready to explain what you actually do, I'd like to understand. When you're genuinely curious, James, I'll be happy to explain. And with that, he left. After James left, I glanced again at the towering flower arrangement. I called my assistant. Please send those flowers to the children's ward at Massachusetts General, I said. The whole thing? She asked, surprised. Every single stem. Because I had never needed empty gestures from my parents, what I needed, and had earned, was far more substantial. In the weeks that followed, the pace accelerated. Every headline carried my name. Forbes, The Wall Street Journal, CNBC. They all wanted the story of the healthcare tech founder who had come out of nowhere. The daughter dismissed by her powerful family, now on the verge of IPO stardom. But I kept the focus where it belonged, not on family drama, but on the mission, on the lives we were improving, on the very real patients whose lives depended on specialists we were now connecting in days, not months. Hospitals across the country began adopting Secure Health at astonishing rates. By the time our IPO was finalized, 450 hospitals were on board. We were connecting 30,000 patients every single day to the care they previously had to wait months to receive. Our IPO debuted at $220 million. My personal paper worth soared past $112 million, more than the combined net worth of my entire extended family. The media loved the Cinderella arc of it all, but I refused to let their narrative become my reality. This wasn't about revenge. It was about impact. Shortly after the IPO, I founded the Mitchell Innovation Foundation, $20 million dedicated to one purpose: funding young women pursuing healthcare technology, particularly those from underrepresented communities. I was reclaiming the Mitchell name on my own terms, reshaping its meaning. When asked by reporters if the foundation was named after my family, I answered honestly, "It's named after me." The foundation launched coding camps, scholarships, and mentorship programs for girls who reminded me of my younger self, brilliant, overlooked, and desperate for someone to believe in them. Meanwhile, my relationship with my biological family settled into something more managed. I attended Christmas dinners for 3 hours maximum, often bringing Alicia as my buffer. My father's attempts to schedule private wealth management meetings were politely declined. My mother's invitations to society galas were mostly met with regretful prior commitments, except for the Children's Hospital benefit, where Secure Health was a major donor. Madison's wedding arrived, and I RSVP'd carefully. Attending ceremony. Will depart after. Prior engagements. James. Surprisingly, began softening. Slowly, tentatively. But trust, once fractured, rebuilds one fragile brick at a time. The only relationship that grew deeper was with Aunt Patricia. I invited her to join the Mitchell Innovation Foundation's advisory board, where her feminist scholarship perspective added crucial depth to our mission. We had dinner weekly, honest, rounding, and free from the performance required at Mitchell family gatherings. One evening, over dinner, Patricia spoke what I had been quietly carrying inside. "You've handled them perfectly, respectful, but with boundaries." I smiled, but admitted what still weighed on me. It's still hard sometimes. Part of me wishes they genuinely understood what I've built, not just its monetary worth, but why it matters. They may never fully understand, Patricia said gently. They live inside a framework you escaped. They understand valuations, not vision. Her words landed with bittersweet truth. My success changed their posture toward me, I said, but not their perspective. Patricia nodded. And that is precisely why you've succeeded, because you pursued meaning before money. My father's most sincere attempt at reconciliation came several months after the IPO. He asked for a private tour of our Kendall Square headquarters. I agreed, curious to see how much of it he was truly capable of seeing. He walked through the open concept design, observing teams collaborating, engineers demoing real-time patient matching algorithms, administrative staff coordinating pilot programs with hospital partners. "This is impressive," he finally said, somewhat surprised. "Far more significant than I imagined." I allowed the silence to stretch. "What exactly did you imagine, Dad?" He hesitated, eyes scanning the bustling office. "Something smaller." It was as close to an admission of misjudgment as Thomas Mitchell would ever allow. "You've proven me wrong," he added softly. "That doesn't happen often." "It was never about proving you wrong," I said. "It was about building something that mattered." He nodded slowly, not fully understanding, but trying. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. Therapy helped too. At Aunt Patricia's gentle insistence, I began seeing Dr. Loving, a specialist in family dynamics. She asked me one question in our first session that reshaped my internal landscape. What would it mean if you accepted that your parents may never fully understand or value your choices the way you want them to? It was a painful question, but freeing. My success had forced their recalculation, but not their true understanding. And true healing came not from finally earning their approval, but from no longer needing it. That shift allowed me to build connections far deeper than any rooted in shared DNA. I formed friendships with other founders who knew what it meant to build something from nothing. I mentored young women who reminded me of my terrified, determined younger self. And most meaningfully, I began speaking in Boston's underserved schools, helping young girls glimpse possibilities no one had shown me. One such day, after a speech at a local girls' tech camp, a 15-year-old girl approached me, eyes wide and earnest. "My parents want me to be a doctor or a lawyer," she said quietly. "They say computer science isn't for girls like me. Did you ever feel that way?" "All the time," I answered honestly. "But the most important thing I learned is that you get to define your success, not your parents, not society, you." "But what if they never understand?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What if they never support me?" Her words hit like a mirror. "Then you build a life so authentically your own that their understanding becomes irrelevant," I said gently. "And you find people who do understand. People who believe in your vision before it's proven." As she nodded, I recognized the girl I once was, and realized fully, perhaps for the first time, that my family's rejection had been both wound and gift. It had forced me to build a resilience that ultimately became my greatest asset. A full year passed since that explosive family dinner, but echoes of that night still lingered in subtle ways. My parents hadn't transformed, but I had. The difference was no longer about wealth or titles. It was about peace. And peace isn't given, it's claimed. One afternoon, my phone rang. To my surprise, it was my mother. "I saw your speech at the Girls in Tech conference," she said softly. "Someone shared it on Facebook." I held my breath, unsure of where this was headed. "You were very good at it," she continued, her voice surprisingly gentle. "Public speaking, you have a presence, like your grandfather. He could always command a room." It was the first time she had ever complimented me on anything that wasn't superficial. "Thank you," I said, my voice measured. She paused, almost like she was searching for unfamiliar words. "I don't fully understand what you do. The technology, the healthcare integration, it's beyond me. But I can see that it matters to you, and apparently to many others." For my mother, this was monumental. She wasn't capable of full understanding, but she was capable of acknowledgement. Sometimes acknowledgement is enough. Not long after, I hosted my first personal celebration, not for my IPO or for my Forbes cover, but simply for a new chapter. A housewarming in Back Bay. The guest list was deliberate. There were no governors, no political donors, no country club board members. Instead, my secure health team, fellow founders, hospital partners, mentors, and most importantly, Aunt Patricia. Yes, I invited my immediate family, but they were now simply guests in my world, not its architects. As I stood in my living room, the conversations flowing effortlessly around me, I felt an unfamiliar but grounding sensation. Wholeness. This was my chosen family. When it came time for the toast, I stood before them with quiet confidence. To authentic success, I began, not measured by balance sheets or social standing, but by the lives we touch and the problems we solve. To surrounding ourselves with people who believe in us before we succeed. not after, and to defining our own legacy, whatever our last name might be. Aunt Patricia raised her glass with a proud glimmer in her eyes. My colleagues smiled with genuine understanding. My parents, they applauded politely. They were still trying to reconcile who I had become, but that wasn't my burden to carry anymore. Later that night, I stood alone on my rooftop terrace, the Boston skyline twinkling under a crisp spring sky. My phone buzzed once again. An international expansion deal had been finalized. Secure Health was officially expanding into the UK. Over 30,000 additional patients would soon receive care faster because of what we built. I thought again of that 15-year-old girl. Of all the young women like her, like me. If my story could help even one of them stand firm in their dreams, the family dinner that once shattered me would become one of my greatest gifts. Because sometimes, life's most painful rejections force us to build unshakable foundations. Sometimes, being cut off from what you think you need leads you directly to what you actually need. And sometimes, the most powerful reply to "we're cutting you off completely" is simple. You build something so meaningful, so powerful, that it speaks for itself. Has your family ever tried to dismiss your dreams or push you down a path that wasn't right for you? How did you respond? Share your story in the comments below.